Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin. The majority of Bigfoot research points to a shy creature, as all great apes are, but the Chapman incident is an important case study in Sasquatch aggression. It was largely overlooked then, but it shouldn't be now. The Chapmans lived in a rural partial town called Ruby Creek in British Columbia. Their home was on the Fraser River. The Chapmans were much like any other native family in the area. That is until September 1941. It was a sunny day with a clear sky. Jeannie Chapman was doing housework when her oldest son, a 9-year-old, came into the house. He told his mom, Jeannie, that there was a cow coming out of the woods and approaching the house. Jeannie was not disturbed about the potential approaching cow. She was disturbed by how upset her son was. She didn't think her son would act the way he was acting over a cow. She rightly went out to investigate. What she saw was no cow. At first she thought she saw a, quote, very big bear moving among the bushes bordering her field. After it saw her, it made its full presence known. Jeannie Chapman saw a, quote, gigantic man covered with 4-inch long hair from head to toe, the color of lightly varnished plywood. The creature was watching Jeannie and her 3 children. In her own words, she had, quote, much too much time to look at it. Then the creature advanced on them. It walked quickly at a steady pace. It did not run. At this point, Jeannie did something very smart. She rushed into the house and returned with a blanket. When she returned, the creature was only a few hundred feet from her children. Like a maternal matador, she held the blanket aloft and kept it in between the kids and the creature. Jeannie and her 3 kids ran behind the house and then ran to the beach of the Fraser River and followed it all the way into town. 3 hours later, Mr. Chapman returned from his job as a railroad track layer. The first thing he noticed was that the door of his woodshed was battered inward. In the house, he found a 55-gallon barrel of dried fish moved and broken open. The floorboards would have easily left marks of the barrel being dragged or pushed. It was not. It was picked up, moved, and broken open. He also found his property littered with enormous human-like tracks. He searched the house for his wife and children, but was relieved to find their tracks heading toward town. He found his family frightened but okay. They returned to the house with Jeannie's father, another man, rifles, and 2 big dogs. But every night the giant footprints reappeared, and twice around 2 a.m., the dogs went wild over something. A week later, the Chapmans left for good. They did not feel safe, and for good reason. Cryptozoologist and biologist Ivan T. Sanderson interviewed the Chapmans a couple years after the fact. Most of the information in my analysis comes from that interview, as it is published in True Magazine's 1960 March edition. Sanderson established that the creature was about 7.5 feet tall based on fence posts in the area. Also, 7.5 feet seemed like a minimal approximation based on the impressions that the creature left. Jeannie described the creature as having 4-inch long hair all over the body except its palms and face. The skin she saw was very dark. I would like to note that a gorilla's face turns a deep purple when its adrenaline rises. Maybe that's what she witnessed. Or, she was elaborating on her hoax using her extensive early 1900s knowledge on primatology. Sanderson asked Jeannie to elaborate on the blanket. He asked her if she covered the children with the blanket because of the old native legend that seeing a Bigfoot meant you would die in 3 years. She bluntly said no. She said that she covered the kids with the blanket so that the creature may think the kids were still in the house and not with her running away. Jeannie then told Sanderson that she had never even heard of that native legend. It's kind of funny when you think about it. The native asking the white scientist to explain this native legend that the native had never heard of and probably thought sounded ridiculous. The knowledge she did have about them was not legendary at all. She never heard the term Sasquatch before meeting Sanderson. She knew them as Oma, or Boss of the Mountain. Jeannie knew of no legends or superstitions about them. All she was told about the Boss of the Mountain was that she was to avoid certain valleys, she was to leave the area if she saw one, and that she was not to struggle if one attacked her. And that's no superstition at all. That is what to do with dangerous animals. Take a moose or a bear. Avoid where you know they're active, get out of the area if you see one, and play dead if they're on top of you. Jeannie Chapman had real-world, practical knowledge about something that most say doesn't exist. And it is easy to say that there is no documentation of physical evidence, but the Chapmans weren't really interested in the speculation and science of the plausibility of an extant North American hominid. They weren't whipping out their smartphones and cataloging a play-by-play of events. They were more interested in keeping their children safe from the monster that came during the night. It was clearly real to them, which is all that matters as far as I'm concerned. And as far as I can tell, they never made or tried to make a dime off all this. But they did lose their house. All for a story which they rarely spoke of. I believe the Chapmans, 100%. What about you? And thanks a lot for listening.